Hello everyone and welcome back to my Star Citizen channel. Today I want to introduce you to a topic that is arguably the heart of Star Citizen when it comes to long-term motivation. I am talking about the vision of how we will really live on and operate our ships in the future. If you want to get informed about this, you can almost get overwhelmed by the sheer mass of information. I have looked at countless design documents and community discussions, but I think one source really hits the nail on the head. The Inside Star Citizen episode titled "Talking with Thorsten" managed to do exactly what is often missing. They explain generally and understandably what the core is actually about before getting lost in the details. Before we can understand how the game feel changes, we have to grasp what is happening under the hood. Thorsten and the team made it very clear that we have to say goodbye to the old idea that ships are just pretty 3D models with a simple health bar. What comes into play now is the so-called resource network. This means that power, fuel, coolant and even oxygen now flow physically correctly through pipes and nodes in the ship. Previously, a hit on the ship was just a point deduction. Now such a hit might physically interrupt a power line, and suddenly the shield generator at the other end of the ship fails even though it is actually still intact just because the connection was cut. That is the technical foundation that makes everything so complex. But this is exactly where the big fear existed for years, whether engineering gameplay would become a stressful nightmare of constant warning messages and pop-ups that turns our awesome spaceship into a miserable workplace. Luckily, the developers had an important realization that I came across during my research. They realized that tasks alone do not make for fun, so they steered hard in the other direction and executed a huge course correction and thus a pivot. What we are getting now is a system that is not there to make our lives harder but to help us survive when everything goes south. We call this the Great Pivot, and it is a completely new philosophy. We are moving away from punishment and towards empowerment. There is this quote from the dev team that sums it up perfectly. They said effectively that engineering gameplay is there to extend the lifetime of ships and not to make our lives miserable. It is about more time, more chances and more control to get out of a bad situation. What does this new gameplay loop look like in practice? I will summarize this as a proactive survival loop which basically consists of 3 large phases that flow fluidly into one another. It starts classically with preparation, which is essentially your new pre-flight checklist. Before you even take off, you have to make sure you are equipped. I am talking about buying spare fuses or getting filled RMC canisters for your multi-tool. For the big ships, you can even buy entire spare components and store them in the cargo hold so you do not get stranded in deep space. Once you are in the air, the focus shifts to active management and maintenance of the systems where you try to optimize performance and prevent wear and tear. But perhaps the most exciting aspect is hazard control, meaning how you react when suddenly in the middle of a fight, completely new threats appear and you have to improvise. The genius part is how the system scales. I saw that it affects everyone but in different ways. If you are sitting in a small single-seater fighter, you naturally do not get up. You use your screens to reroute power and run temporary patches just enough to limp home. But on a multi-crew ship it is a completely different story. There you physically run to damaged components, pull out tools and swap fuses and parts right in the middle of combat while all hell is breaking loose outside. And engineering does not just mean repairing, because it is also about completely new threats directly inside your ship. Here we come to a classic that I absolutely have to mention, namely fire. For the first time, the interior of your ship becomes a seriously dangerous place. Thanks to the resource network I mentioned earlier, this is not just a visual effect, but a systemic threat. Fire spreads, it consumes oxygen, and it destroys your ship from the inside out. There are many causes, such as a laser hit on the hull that grills a component, or you are at fault yourself because you overheated the systems. How do you fight that? I identified 2 main methods. The direct method is the fire extinguisher, which requires real teamwork. Or you choose the dramatic method and vent the atmosphere. You open doors to the vacuum and simply suck the fire as well as the oxygen out into space. Finally, let us get to the launch and what that means for us. At release, this feature will affect every ship in the game. Not all equally strong, since about 80 ships will be fully implemented and another 30 partially. But it is just the start and a baseline. The developers are deliberately holding back even more complex things so as not to overwhelm us immediately. For the team, this is not just a feature. For them, this is Star Citizen. It is the deep systemic gameplay that this project has been working towards since day one. But they need our feedback. How we use the system will determine how it is developed further. This brings me to a point at the end where I am super curious about your opinion. What do you think generally about this direction that Star Citizen is taking with engineering? Do you think this path is good? And above all, I am interested in what you have perhaps already noticed yourselves. What do you currently not like at all in the game or perhaps in the PTU, and where do you see the biggest problems with the implementation right now? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Star Citizen content. Thanks for watching, until the next time.